I have been called a Trump alarmist for a very long time. They were wrong. I was right. He wasn't going to leave power. Okay. But ever since then, and since the Hollywood Access tape where he said, I'm going to grab him by the pussy, and he survived that, every time he's been done crazy shit and gotten himself in trouble, I said, no, it's not over.
Takes his speech, Trump's press conference with Netanyahu, these kinds of things. And they're sitting back and saying, there is some crazy shit going on, okay? And I am not comfortable with this. This is just really getting out of control. My hope, my sense, because I'm kind of an independent myself, that's where people are feeling, and that's what will determine
honestly, Tom,
the midterm.
That crazy shit has not moved them for 10 years. I remember being on this show the night of the debate when Trump was ranting about their eating the dogs. And I was like, that has got to be. That was the most unhinged thing I've ever seen. And it was...
If you've watched Bill Maher for more than 5 minutes, you know he doesn't tiptoe. He stomps, he punctures, and he names names. And for the better part of a decade, one name has sat at the center of his bullseye: Donald J. Trump. Tonight we're walking through the greatest hits, the monologues that went viral, the new rules that landed like closing arguments, and yes, the infamous orangutan challenge that spiraled into a lawsuit only Trump could be shameless enough to file.
I've said that. I've argued with people. Brett Stevens, my good friend, he's on the show next week. He said at one point a few years ago, the Trump thing, I said, no. Tonight I'm saying, I think it's over. I just want to bring up an analogy to one person. Even before we were around, there was a guy named Joe McCarthy in the early 50s, and he had a hold on America. And it blew out in about 2 years, right? 2-3 years, he was the biggest thing, and then it was just, and I feel like eating the dogs, we're at this point. I feel like we're at the Captain Queeg with the strawberries, we're at Denzel at the end of Training Day, I'm King Kong up here. I just think...
We'll also look at Maher's withering take on Melania's public role, because for Maher, hypocrisy, whether it's a Be Best anti-bullying campaign launched from the bully's White House or an immigration crackdown framed by an immigrant first lady, deserves the same spotlight as the lies. If you appreciate straight talk laced with receipts, you're in the right place. And if you want more of these deep dive narrations, hit like, tap subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Which Bill Maher moment hit you like a wake-up alarm?
Trump is at the UN, and we completely did a 180 on Ukraine. Okay, flexibility is good, but, it is kind of amazing. I mean, for the longest time, he was like, oh, but let's just give Putin everything he wants. I know how to end this war. Surrender. Surrender, Ukraine. Now, this week, he said, this is his quote, after getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win. After getting to know and fully understand, it's a little late in the game, but just admit one thing. Just admit if Obama or Biden did this, you'd go batshit.
Well, we have spent almost $200 billion on Ukraine, and I look at the countries around the world, particularly our European allies, who still buy oil from Russia. They are funding a war that they are against.
Let's start where this saga locked into pop culture. 2013, The Tonight Show. Maher joked that he would donate $5 million to charity if Trump could prove he wasn't the spawn of an orangutan. A satirical mirror held up to Trump's birther stunt against Barack Obama. Most people got the joke. Trump got a pen. He sent a copy of his birth certificate and then sued Maher for the money. Seriously. The suit went nowhere, but the episode told you everything about Trump's thin skin and Maher's willingness to keep the receipts.
You said it was 10 million that came under Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Trump in England said today it was 25.
No, 25 illegally here in the United States.
Look, I'll say this for Trump. He's got this idea that America is still the biggest swinging dick in the world. And we have not used our power as much as we should. That's what the tariffs are about. We have the power to change these people's, other nations' trading practices with us, some of which were out of line. I'm surprised that people went along with it as much as they did, so he wasn't completely wrong about that. He said, look, NATO hasn't been paying their fair share. I'm going to make them do that. He wasn't wrong about that. And I'll tell you this, one thing about him that I know, I'm not going to tell you how I know, But a lot of people have seen the same thing. He really does hate war. He really does not like it when people die in war. There's 4 different wars.
It also foreshadowed the next 10 years, a comedian warning the country not to normalize a man who sues over punchlines while peddling conspiracy theories as policy. By 2015 and 2016, when too many pundits treated Trump like a ratings-rich sideshow, Maher used real time to pound a single drum. Take him seriously. He called out the media's addiction to the spectacle, warned repeatedly about authoritarian tendencies, and framed the election not as left versus right, but norm versus chaos.
Can't China put an end to that? Can't they? I feel like he picked a fight with a bigger bully than him, and that we don't have the leverage. This is the problem with this strategy, in my view, is that China has the rare earth metals. China sends us the phones. China has the antibiotics, for Christ's sake, and the pharmaceuticals.
This has been a massive gift to China, what's happening here, because they can go around the world and make alliances and make other arrangements and look like the good guy, which they certainly aren't, by the way. We were the good guy for a long time with a lot of these allies, and I think this is perfect timing for them, and they can endure pain. I mean, when Americans don't get 30 dolls, they freak out. It's not an issue for China.
He didn't just roast Trump's latest gaffe, he traced the pattern. Attacks on the press, threats against critics, the habit of dangling government power over private entities. Remember those new rules that felt less like comedy than civic primers? That was by design. Maher has always been a comic who understands that jokes stick when they're stapled to facts. When the Trump campaign arrived at the Republican National Convention in 2016 with a speech for Melania that cribbed passages from Michelle Obama,
I'm one of the few people who can say he directed Trump. I directed Trump in a movie.
No.
Celebrity? Yes, in Celebrity. And he was, he was a pleasure to work with and a very good actor. He was very polite.
How dare you?
Hit his mark and did everything correctly and had a real flair for show business.
If you think you were canceled before,
I could direct him now. If he would let me, if he would let me direct him now that he's president, I think I could do wonders. But he was very easy to work with and
he's different in person. And when you say that, people who are just purely emotional get very upset, even though it's just the truth. We're just saying the truth.
I am a Democrat. I voted for Kamala Harris, and I take issue with him, on 95% of the thing.
Later, when the White House rolled out Be Best, an anti-bullying initiative paired with a president who tweeted like a demolition derby, Maher's monologues wrote themselves. He didn't need to invent a narrative. He just had to recite the facts and then let the irony detonate. The Free Melania era deserves its own chapter, and Maher gave it one. As the internet turned Melania into a hostage meme, Maher repeatedly rejected the fairy tale that she was a passive prop living under glass.
There will be another Trump, but this one, I think, is done. You can just feel it. I mean, here's some of the things he said this week. I'm the greatest of all time. Maybe greater than Elvis. Elvis had a guitar. I don't have the privilege of a guitar. I mean, it's, first of all, when I think of great guitarists, Elvis, it's like Clapton, Hendrix, Joe Walsh, Elvis. It was a prop. He never even played it. He also said, I really haven't been treated very well, but that's the story of my life. Yes, born into crushing wealth.
Inheriting a real estate fortune that he squandered.
I feel like it's just at that point where they've had enough. And trust me, the polls will be tied on election day, but the people will get in the booth and enough of them will be like, yeah, I'm glad this is private because I don't want people to know. I'm turning my back on him, but I promise you they will. I feel like there's a third of America that's always with the Trumps. They used to call them the Birchers and the Birthers or the Tea Party. They go by many different names. They're the same people. And then he moved it to like half the country, and it'll move back a little closer to the third, and we'll be okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
No, he said. She benefited from the brand, she played the role, and she chose not to counter the cruelty at the center of that brand. When she boarded a plane to visit detained children wearing a jacket that read, "I really don't care, do you?" Maher's reaction mixed shock and clinical precision. This is not a gaffe. This is the message. He tied the optics to the policy, the family separations, the dehumanizing rhetoric, and forced viewers to confront how aesthetics can launder brutality.
I was reading Tom Friedman's editorial this week, and it's like many other editorials, and I mention him because I'm a big fan of his. And he wrote, if Donald Trump doesn't stop his rogue behavior, he's going to destroy all the things that made America strong, respected, and prosperous. Totally agree. And then he finished up, I have never been more afraid for America's future in my life. Totally agree again. You know who's not reading this? Trump. Or anyone in his cabinet, or anyone on that half of the whole country. So you're just jerking each other off, okay? Writing these editorials for the people who already agreed to read. I don't see what it's doing. I'm just not interested in this beat a dead horse contest that you're in. I think we have to have something different. And I don't need to be lectured on who Donald Trump is. I was out for, I was the one who was saying he was never gonna leave to begin with. This was a Nixon to China thing for me to go there. It's because we were so vitriolic toward each other. And by the way, if you don't know what Nixon to China means, maybe you shouldn't be involving yourself in political arguments.
Quick check-in. Do you think public figures are responsible for the messages on their backs as much as their speeches at the podium? Drop your take below. Was that jacket a careless stunt or a core truth said out loud? Years before January 6th, Maher came back again and again to a warning that sounded paranoid to the complacent and painfully prescient to anyone reading history. If this man loses, he will not go quietly. In 2018, 2019, 2020, the monologues kept pressing the point.
The Trump administration broke the law in just cutting off funding for everything, including cancer research, robotics research, energy research, without stipulating exactly which regulations Harvard broke and without giving Harvard a chance to reply.
But Harvard's endowment is over $50 billion, right? They couldn't dip into that?
No.
No?
No. Well, they can. They have to kind of tide some researchers over, but 80% of it is earmarked for specific things like scholarships, like endowed professorships, and also the math doesn't work. Given the scale of Harvard's research, it would be eating its seed corn, and it would spiral downward if it did that.
That sounds like bullshit. I mean, you have a pile of $50 billion.
He told viewers what a slow-moving coup looks like, delegitimizing votes in advance, pressuring state officials, telling supporters to distrust any result that isn't a win. When the worst actually arrived, Maher didn't need to change his tone. The country finally caught up to it. After the Capitol was stormed, his new rules framed the event as the violent crest of a long wave of lies. He didn't just wag a finger at the mob, he named the architects and he named the enablers who had spent months laundering the lie on television. That's what it looks like when a roast graduates into a record.
This happened before, and I get the counter-argument. This happened for 4 years. He was reckless, but nothing bad happened in the way they said it would. And then, of course, January 6th happens, but he couldn't pull that one off. That's the Wall Street Journal.
Wait a minute. Nothing bad happened. He's running again. That's what's bad happened.
I know. He can run as long as he's not in jail. He can run.
But why isn't he in jail? That's a good question, because the institutions did not held. Certain individuals held. Like Mark Milley.
All the cases aren't done, by the way. So.
Brad Raffensperger.
Okay. Yeah, right. Those people, but I'm not sure those people are around anymore. It looks to me like the first time was a dry run, and this time it's going to be a whole different situation. And for those Republicans who said, well, we didn't impeach him because the courts will handle it, well, then the courts didn't handle it.
And then they endorsed him.
And the Supreme Court has pretty much given him carte blanche to do anything with impunity, has it not?
Maher's best takedowns work because they ride along with the news cycle without becoming hostage to it. When the classified documents saga erupted, he didn't get lost in the day-to-day motion practice. He zoomed out and exposed the absurdity of the shifting explanations. I declassified them with my mind, while anchoring his jokes in the imagery the public had seen. Bankers' boxes stacked in a ballroom, boxes in a bathroom.
You guys have been saying for a very long time that Trump just says stuff, but I mean, come on. We have gone from just saying stuff now to, James Comey, I was saying in the monologue, you're not supposed to comment at all, a president, on an ongoing investigation. He called him bad person, sick guy, did terrible things, guilty as hell. Would you at least agree that we are in a very different place than we've ever been?
Well, my perspective is that I don't want us to rewrite history here. In 2016, Chuck Schumer said of James Comey that he lost all confidence in him. So there have been Republicans and there have been Democrats who have expressed that James Comey has lied, has leaked. And this is a guy who was...
That wasn't talking about a trial. That wasn't talking about an ongoing investigation. That was just an opinion about a guy who was the FBI director.
Well, right, but I mean, I don't disagree with Trump that James Comey, he was under oath. He lied to Congress. That is a crime. That's perjury.
Do we know that as a fact?
No.
Well, I would say a grand jury of his peers, 14 people, indicted him over this.
Comedy thrives on incongruity. Maher used the pictures to make the incongruity obvious. Here was a former president arguing he was a victim of a witch hunt while storing state secrets like spare Christmas ornaments. That's not just a punchline, it's an indictment that lands because it's evidenced. When the E. Jean Carroll civil cases reached their conclusions, Maher took another approach we should underline. He stayed close to the legal language. He made sure viewers knew what the jury actually found and what the court actually ordered. He didn't smear, he cited.
Republicans have to stop excusing all the dictatory stuff that comes out of Trump's mouth by saying, he's just kidding. He says stuff. When Trump proclaimed last year that if he won re-election, he'd be dictator on day one, Republicans said things like,
I think it was a joke.
It's entertainment.
We all know Trump uses unique expressions when he explains things.
Now, Senate Majority Leader John Thune says when Trump talks about running for a third term, he's having some fun with it, probably messing with you. Yeah. When I challenged Ben Shapiro here on Trump being too dismissive and reposting that Liz Cheney deserves to be tried for treason, Ben answered sarcastically, wait, he said shit? That's crazy. Donald Trump said shit? This is such an interesting position for a political party to take about their leader. Trust us, there's nothing to worry about. Our guy is just full of shit.
Then he layered the ridicule over the record, the bluster at the microphones, the contradictions in depositions, the public meltdowns that ran counter to legal strategy. That's why his detractors have trouble dismissing him as just a comic. He's the comic who bothers to read the docket. By the way, if you value fact-based commentary that doesn't pretend the court record is optional, hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep doing this the right way.
Trump is the only president when you're relieved when he doesn't keep his campaign promise. And always the idea that if Trump really did cross the line, these Republicans say, oh, they would object. I asked Charlie Kirk about Trump, saying that he would like to put homegrown Americans in Salvadorian prisons. And Charlie said, if he were to do that, I wouldn't support it. But I think that's just a one-liner. Yeah, like Henny Youngman. Oh, that Andrew Dice Trump, always...
Through every phase, the hush money trial in New York, the indictments, the courthouse press conferences where Trump performs wounded greatness, Maher has returned to one motif, the world's loudest victim. It's a brutal phrase because it reads like a diagnostic code for our politics. The man who measured himself by crowd sizes and ratings could never abide a reality where the audience boos. Maher poked at that insecurity in the purest late-night way, by turning Trump's boasts back on him.
And let me first say that to all the people who treated this like it was some kind of summit meeting, you're ridiculous. Like I was going to sign a treaty or something. I have no power. I'm a fucking comedian, and he's the most powerful leader in the world. I'm not the leader of anything, except maybe a contingent of centrist-minded people who think there's got to be a better way of running this country than hating each other every minute. So, thank you. So,
by replaying the promises against the outcomes by using Trump's own words as the rope. When the former president threatened networks, floated pulling licenses, or bragged about strong-arming corporations, Maher didn't treat it as a glitch. He called it the point. That drumbeat matters because authoritarians don't start with tanks. They start with threats and see who obeys in advance. Maher's commentary on immigration policy sharpened the hypocrisy into a spear. While the administration pushed chain migration as a slur, Maher noted, accurately, that Melania followed a legal path and that her parents later became citizens.
When former Senator Ben Sasse was asked about the idea that Trump wouldn't leave in 2020, his comment was, "He says crazy stuff. We've always had a peaceful transfer of power. It's not going to change." But it did change, because it wasn't peaceful. And that's the problem with dictator jokes. They don't stay jokes. And flirting with authoritarianism doesn't stay flirting.
He used those facts not to attack her background, but to expose how slogans erase human reality. When the policy is cruelty, but the messaging is law and order, Maher insists on dragging the public back to the law part and the order part. Who benefited, who suffered, who got waivers, who got photo ops. That's not gossip, it's governance, and it's why the laughs land with a thud in the pit of your stomach.
Okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did.
If you made it this far, you're part of the solution, an audience that values clarity over clicks. Do me a favor, subscribe if you haven't yet, drop a like if this breakdown earned it, and answer this in the comments so we get a real conversation going. Do you think Maher's relentless approach actually moves persuadable viewers, or is its value in mobilizing the people who already see the threat? And second, where's the line for you between a roast that reveals and a joke that hardens teams? I'll be reading and responding, and your answers shape what we dig into next. Because if there's one thing Maher has taught over these years, it's that laughter isn't the enemy of seriousness. Apathy is.